start the recording. So welcome to everyone, and Aldis, are you out there in Cyberland?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Well, I'm going to show a couple polls first, everybody, and if you the slideshow PowerPoint stuff we're going to do has some Q&A that we thought everybody would want to know about Aldi as he explains skill sets and things like that. But at the end, until you guys are done or Aldi has to go, you'll be able to ask questions of him. And if you look down, there's a chat box and a question box. You can put it into either one, and I'll pull it out for you and ask Aldi at the end. But if you would hold the questions sort of till then. Now that said, you can type them in advance, and if it's something that fits with what Aldi's saying right now, we'll make sure he hears it then. Otherwise, we'll save it to the end. For everybody, we're now going to take a poll, and let's see here. Yep. For some reason, it just shot me over to managing polls. That's not where I want to be. So we'll get back to the PowerPoint. Maybe, oh, here we go. First one we're going to do is open right now. We're just trying to get a sense. It should be up on your screen. Let's see if that's what you guys are seeing. Yeah. So Aldi, what's going on is we're just kind of getting a sense how many boys coaches might be on, how many of these are girls coaches, how many might be club directors, how many might be, involved in youth volleyball and things like that from a coaching point of view. And we pretty much have got everybody pulled in already, so give everybody a sense of what it is that's going on. As you can see, your audience view shows you guys don't have the screen. What's going on? Stop. Something very strange just happened there. You'd think I was a novice at this instead of having done a bunch of these for some reason. Definitely not doing the... So here's your poll, which you should be seeing now. There you go. Well, this is how we got, Aldi. We've got, a lot of girls coaches, but some boys coaches on it in the group.
Cool.
Yeah, and then...
no beach volleyball.
No beach volleyball, guys, this go around, yeah. And... I think we'll leave it at that, and we'll just get going from here. So, tell us about what's on the screen right now, Aldi.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening in tonight. So I'm Aldis, and I think, yeah, I'm not I'm still 6'2". That's good. You don't have my weight there. I was born in 1956 in Wilmington, Delaware, so I'm an East Coast guy that made it to on the Olympic team, where it was predominantly we had guys from California on the team. And yep, I'm a U.S. citizen, although I'm of Latvian heritage. My name, Aldis Berzins, sounds strange to a lot of people. I'm a first-generation a Latvian. Both my parents were from the country of Latvia, which is south of Finland. It's up there in Northern Europe. And that's actually how I got into volleyball. My father played. There are many ethnic groups that played volleyball back in the 50s and 60s, and I ended up being a starting outside hitter on the '84 gold medal team that beat Brazil in the final.
Well, let's get,
So,
yeah, this is all, the next slide is going to kind of explain for college. So tell us about, this is what we're saying about you and tell us about your college
okay.
career.
Well, my college career was great. I mean, I got recruited to play at Ohio State University, although in the days that I played, there wasn't junior volleyball, like there is now. Lots of organized teams and girls and boys volleyball, club volleyball. I learned how to play at these Latvian camps, summer camps, and this guy Terry Liskevich, who was the head men's coach at Ohio State, he was Ukrainian from Chicago, and he knew some of the Latvians in Chicago, and he asked them, well, who's a good Latvian player at these Latvian summer camps? And my name got mentioned, and I got a letter in the mail. There was no email back then. I got a snail mail letter from Terry asking me to come to Ohio State. I was going to go to Penn State and play soccer, but that kind of changed the whole course of my volleyball career. It was a letter in the mail, and Buckeyes were a little bit further away from home, and I was pretty adventuresome. And my freshman year, all 4 years, we made it to the NCAA Final Four. We never won. We made it to the finals once. I guess this is great. You put together all these accolades. We had four very competitive years there. Kind of dominated the Midwest, but couldn't knock off the California team in the final.
So you played soccer at a high level as well, huh?
Well, high level. I tried out. I was a walk-on my sophomore year at Ohio State. I had played soccer all through high school, so I had a real love for that sport, and that I think I had upset Terry Liskevich a little bit. I didn't tell him I was trying out for the soccer team in the fall, so I was missing. I made it, and then I told him, and then he said, "Go ahead," which is actually a great thing. And I think to your listeners out there, I think it is a great idea if you can play multiple sports, do some cross-training. I don't think a lot of club coaches would appreciate that, but they want you there all the time. But I think you end up further ahead in the long run if you've had some experience in other sports, learning other strategies, having experiences with other coaches and so forth. So, yeah, I made the soccer team. I played, one year. I wasn't a starter. There were lots of exchange students from Europe on the Buckeye team, but I was pretty good on crosses into the box. I could jump and head the ball in. Could jump higher than anybody. So I, came focused on volleyball after that.
No, I've known you a long time, but I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. Huh. Well,
yeah.
And you got a letter, like you said, it's not the email and the texting, but something came in the mail, huh?
Yeah. Glad it didn't get lost in the post office. But, yeah, I was very thankful to Liskevich. He was, a very good coach for young people in college. He really stressed academics, actually, over athletics. And that's the first thing he said to us in our first team meeting. And I went out and got straight A's my first semester, to the surprise of my father. I mean, I wasn't a straight A student in high school by any means, but after that, the college life kind of got the best of me. I ended up graduating in time, but it was not straight A's though.
And of course, Terry went on to serve as our Olympic coach in both 88 and 92. Um,
Yeah, and 96
as
in
well as
Atlanta.
96. Yeah, we
Yeah.
had him for 3 Olympiads. And then his kids were multi-purpose athletes. I know that they were very good at soccer as well. And he's now up at Oregon. Where the heck? No, Oregon State.
Yeah, he's at another OSU, not the Ohio State University, but yeah, he's a Beaver up there, and I keep in touch with him. Yeah, his kids Mark and Krista were both athletic, and yeah, this is kind of further down in my story, but I circled, after college, I reconnected after my Olympic career with Terry to be his assistant coach in Atlanta at the Atlanta Olympics. I was with the women's national team.
Yeah.
So it kind of came full circle with Terry. We've been through a lot of volleyball together. I must say, Terry, when I came onto the team at Ohio State, this is how crude it was back in the day. I had never played really indoors. I'd only played on the grass at a summer camp, and I didn't know how to dive and slide. And that was one of the first things that he taught me, doing kind of these flying push-ups, at first, and trying to slide and not knock your chin open. So I was the most improved. He saw potential in me, and so he started me over some seniors my freshman year. And I was elected the most improved after my freshman year. And I was also elected the most improved after my sophomore year.
Oh, wow.
So it just goes to show, maybe how pitiful I was, when I came into college. But and I was kind of a, weakling too in a way. I remember growing 2 inches and adding about 10 pounds in college. The Latvians are kind of late bloomers, so for you players out there, you can you can start kind of late and really accelerate in your game.
Well, let's go to after college then here, and we'll do the next slide, which has got a lot of international success, of course.
Yeah, that was let's see, U.S. national team. I played for 8 years on the USA team. My first year I was just still a junior, between my junior and senior year. Yeah, it was we went to the World Cup in '77 in Japan, and I was asked to kind of fill out the roster, the bottom 4 guys. I didn't play a whole lot, but then, I just gradually, over my 8-year career with the national team, I worked my way into a starting position. It was only the last couple years that I was actually a starter on the team. And I played opposite Coach Karai. Some of you might have know his name. More than mine, I was kind of fading out just as the USA team started peaking.
Wait, fading out, and you're the MVP in '83. What was that? A really quick?
Well, I mean, I was MVP in '83. I started in '84. My last tournament was in '85. Kind of bookends. It was another World Cup in Japan. That was my first tournament, was Japan also, but then I was getting older. Karch was 5 years younger, so I was kind of in the middle of the pack, on the team. What was I? Maybe 20, my late 20s, 28, 29. There's some guys over 30 on the team, and but anyway, yeah. So I retired then in '85. I had I wanted some energy in my legs so I could, play professionally. A lot of us went. I guess that's down a little bit further. It shows that I played professionally in Italy. Some of you might not know, but back in '84, there were these rules where you still had to be an amateur. You couldn't receive any money for playing volleyball. The Olympic rules. They take your gold medal away if they found out you're being paid to play. So that's why and then they changed the rule that following year in '85, and so many of us went to Italy to play and make money, and then come back to the national teams in the summer and play in the World Championships or World Cup. But let's see, what else is there? '85 World Cup, I talked about that a little bit. It was my last tournament, and it was fantastic because, as your listeners might or might not know, '84 there was a boycott of the Olympic Games in Los Angeles by the Eastern Bloc, they called it back then. So the Soviet Union didn't come, and they told some other teams like Poland, that they had control over, not to come, and Yugoslavia, and so then the following year in '85, the World Cup was just for volleyball, so nobody boycotted that. All the teams came, and we won that, kind of legitimized our gold medal in '84. So it was a great finish, and I've been honored. I've been honored to be honored by USA Volleyball. I made the all-era team, and I mentioned I was in Italy, and I went over with my wife the first year. I played for 5 years there. I played for 3 and coached for 2. I went over there with my wife my first year, and then after 5 years I had 3 baby boys. So life was good in Italy. Yeah, they were all, one was actually born over there in Milan. The other 2 kind of, we didn't time it, but they were born in the U.S.
So one could play for Italy now.
Pardon me?
One has an Italian passport then.
Yeah, one could, play in Italy, I guess. Although, I guess he's considered American born abroad. That's the situation. But he might have trouble running for president. That's Dinas. Like all the birthers out there. And then another all-time great volleyball player recognition in 2007. I've been, like I said, I've been humbled and honored, and all that, all those bullet points there were just a lot of fun for me. It was hard work, but in the end it was a lot of fun.
This is really not on the slide. We're going to go to the '84 Olympics next, but since it's not on the slide, what have you been doing for the last 10 or 15 years to impact sport around the world?
Well, the last 10 years I've been working for the Special Olympics. I work at their headquarters in Washington, D.C., and I'm in charge of helping put on these World Games that we have. Many people don't know that the Special Olympics is a global organization. It empowers people with intellectual disabilities through sport, and I hope you all volunteer in the future. It's a great experience. Some of my boys have, and like my first experience, my background is in sport, but also in IT. I got a master's degree in computer science. So they actually hired me in their IT department initially, and I was working with contracts with computer vendors and so forth for these gigantic World Games they have in the odd years. So my first World Games were in Dublin, Ireland in 2003, and it was really cool. And the opening ceremonies, they were very special. I'd say the 4 biggest personalities on the earth were there, at the opening ceremonies, and nobody knew about it. There were like 7,000 athletes watching, and no TV, no ABC, Wide World of Sports, but Bono, the U2 group, played at the opening ceremonies, and then Muhammad Ali was there, and Nelson Mandela, and the husband of Maria Shriver, the Terminator, was there too. So, I mean, I defy you to name, 4 more popular people globally. I mean, it was pretty impressive, and it's all, pretty much run for free, and we find sponsors and so forth to put them on.
Well, and it
no boycotts,
yeah.
boycotts for the Special Olympics.
Let the people listening in know then, and I can email this information to everybody. But Scott Buss shared some good information that something's exciting happening in Los Angeles in about 4 or 5 years. What is that?
Yeah. Our World Games, Special Olympics World Games, are coming back to the U.S. We've been overseas. They happen every 4 years, just like the non-Special Olympics, as I call them, the IOC Games. But we go in the odd years. So, this year in 2011, we were in Athens, Greece, with all the riots, and then Los Angeles bid successfully on the games in 4 years out in 2015. And there'll be a Winter Games in between. We toggle every 2 years. So in 2013, we'll be in Korea, right where Korea also won the Olympic Winter Games for the IOC Games. It's about 5 years down the road or whatever. But anyway, we'll be in LA. We're celebrating that. I won't have to travel as far for those jobs. So I'm excited to go back to LA where I was in '84.
And for everybody listening in, there's also the National Special Olympics held every 4 years. It's been in Iowa. In 2010, it was in Lincoln. And my son and I, Aldis, Tom Hoff was there from the 2008 team with his wing injured. Tom will be another great player webinar later on this season. And the Nebraska girls did a great clinic, and that was we had about 20 Special Olympic teams from all over the U.S. in Lincoln. Where will the next one be in about 3 more years?
We'll be in New Jersey.
Okay.
Princeton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That. So yeah. Thanks, John. Again, that was a fantastic coaching clinic you put on there, and Tom Hoff too. You guys know he's the captain of the Beijing gold medal team. Tom came to Athens this summer as a guest, an honored guest, and he put on clinics there along with Vanja Gribic from Serbia, and we had Adriana Behar, the beach player from Brazil, and they all came to Athens to the Special Olympics Games, and they put on demonstrations. We had scrimmage, and we introduced beach volleyball. I know there aren't any beach volleyball guys out there, but we introduced beach volleyball as a demonstration sport for the Special Olympians. So anyway, there's a lot of great help, but we need a lot of grassroots help too. So I'm going to put a pitch in here. If you guys can find time to coach or volunteer for the Special Olympics in any way, it would be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to the '84 Olympics, but before I do so, Jack Flora notes that in addition to your volleyball highlights, we should have put on the thing playing 2 years for the Multnomah Athletic Club as well. And I'm sorry, Jack, that I missed that. The MAC team did benefit from having Aldi on the team for 2 years at Open, if I believe right.
Yeah, Jack Flora. He was a great connection, good friend that I made for. I coached 1 year the collegiate volleyball with Marlene Piper at Portland State University. And I was looking, who can I hook up with here in Portland? Are there any volleyball players here? And sure enough, it's a very prestigious old athletic club there, downtown Portland, and Jack was running the team, and I tried out, and I passed the audition, got on the team, and played. Went to Hawaii. I think that the Nationals, the USVBA, I think they called it at the time. Nationals were in Hilo, and so yeah, I have good memories from that year, and that was the year that we boycotted the Moscow Olympics. It was kind of a tit for tat. In '84, they didn't come to ours because in '80 we had boycotted the Moscow Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the days. All right. Well, we're going to now go to the '84 sort of highlights, and this next part will be about the skill sets and talking to players as well as coaches, and a little bit of history too, of course. So as we get there, let's. This slide talks about the two-person passing game. So give us a little bit of insight and sort of your history and what you thought about that.
I'm reading this slide for the first time. Yeah, this two-person passing system, I was so thankful that Doug and his staff, Bill Neville and Tony Crabb, his assistant coaches, came up, invented or created this two-person passing system, because it forced me on to the court. I had to be out there with Karch, which was wonderful. So it made me a starter because I wasn't a dominant outside hitter. I had a pretty good jump. My vertical was like 38 inches, but I was 6'2" and not very imposing, to say the least. But Karch and I were, statistically, the best passers on the team, and they just planted the both of us out there. And it took a while to develop because they were trying different people out there. We did the standard, 5-person, make a W or a half moon with 4 people, and the middle blockers struggling, getting aced, and at some point, I guess it's a question for Doug, a light bulb went on, and they said, well, let's see, we're winning most of the time. Our side-out percentage is over 75% when we have Berzins out there with Karch passing, and only those two guys touching the ball. So I remember some of the first practices where we tried to implement it, and I was just telling Craig Buck, who was our big middle, he's probably 6'9", to just get out of my way. Even if a ball's served short and it's going to drop right on his head, to step aside because I'm coming in there and I can get it. And so it took a little while to have people, and the way they sold it was that, okay, Craig, now you're gonna concentrate on defense, or maybe hit a back row attack, like the opposite guy shouldn't pass. He should just be getting ready to barrel down on the back row, the pipe or the D, as we called them back then. And so it went to like a role-based offense. Everybody kind of had their role. And mine, was to primarily lay the ball up to Dusty Dvorak, who was the starting setter at the time. And I used to laugh that he was getting a little pudgy because he never had to leave the zone 7, we called it, along the net, where I'd lay the ball on his forehead. He never had to chase it down. That's a joke. I mean, there were some tough serves, and the serves were different back then. There were these really, people stepped back and bombed these floaters that actually I saw at the NCAA Final Four. There's kind of a diversion here, but Santa Barbara, that made it to the final there, they were stepping back and hitting a lot of jump floats, and the passers, the collegiate passers these days aren't used to seeing that. I mean, they're used to seeing jump serves rifled at them. And so, and I know for a fact too, in Europe there are lots of people that are starting to bomb these floats from about 30 feet back. So those were the passes that I could pass fairly well in. And there were jump serves too, and when there were jump serves, Karch and I we added Pat Powers as a third passer. I mean, we were good, but we weren't like, gods of passing. We needed to have somebody step in and pass, a lane with the jump serve. So I see you have a new photo there. That's a great, one of my favorite pictures after we won the gold medal. we're pretty relaxed and all pointing our fingers up, and that's me on the right, number 12, with Doug's hand on my shoulder. And Bill Neville, who I mentioned, the other assistant coach, along with Tony Crabb. Bill's there on the far left with the "We Did It" T-shirt. And Bill was, it was really interesting. I'd say that's one of the most brilliant things that Doug did, besides create the two-passer offense, was to find coaches that complemented him. And Doug wasn't exactly, the guy that would come into the huddle and fire the team up. He was more the tactician. He'd tell us to take line or whatever, step back here. I mean, he could fire the team up too, but Bill was exceptional at it. I mean, he would just get in your dish, and there were matches that I think he turned around, by just calling a timeout, and then Doug, sicking him on us, coming into the huddle, and it was pretty colorful language he'd use. We had some marathon matches too. Back then, you played side-out volleyball, where we had sometimes 3-hour, 45-minute slugfests, like you see in tennis these days still, where there's no clock or no rally scoring. Close to 4-hour matches against Japan, and I remember Bill coming in, and after a couple hours, your batteries are kind of down, and he'd come in there and just charge you back up again, and will the team, as a coach, to some victories. And who you don't see there, unfortunately, is, I think, Tony Crabb. I see his foot in the lower left corner. I think he's standing next to Bill, and he was instrumental in creating. We did some unique things with blocking that we can talk about later, that are still used today. Commit blocking in the middle, and leaving people on the outside, and switching people along the net. Putting the setter over on the left-hand side blocking versus getting hammered by the star lefty there if he was blocking on the right. So we were switching all around, and we did things like stack blocking to stop combination plays that aren't run that often anymore. You don't see X's very often, or reversed X's and stuff like that. But there were pump fakes. In some ways, it was a lot more colorful, the offense back then. In some ways.
Yeah.
In
All
other,
right.
okay.
Well, we're gonna. There's 3 things that we've got 2 slides of each, and we'll do hitting, passing, and then digging. And from a player's point of view, your cue words, the way you practice and learn how to be a better 6'2" hitter against the 6'9" Russian players, or the whoever. So the first slide is hitting, showing you, swinging away outside back then. So just from a great player to the players that are listening in, these are being recorded, and we'll be bringing people to these segments so they can listen to you about hitting right now. Tell us about hitting and your thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I wish I would have been better prepared, but I'll just kind of wing it here and let's see. I wish my eyes were above the net there. Jeez, it doesn't look like I'm jumping very high. Got to get a better camera, man. But anyway, hitting. I mean, I can talk from my personal experience easily.
That's about as best I can do, Aldi.
Yeah, look at that. I need that. That's not bad. I'd say, it starts with the approach. For me, that's something that I thought I was blessed with. I could accelerate to the ball, and that's something that's hard to teach, where you're going faster and faster as you make your approach. And I've taught the junior club level. I coached for 8 years with the Maryland volleyball program, and I've coached at many different levels, and I teach this 4-step approach where you take left, right, and then I almost have to stand up to do this. I'm going to switch that. You're going to have to edit the tape. It's a right, left, and then right, left, and then the last left foot comes around and closes. It's called the step close approach, and it's very hard to to actually talk through in a webinar. But what's important is that you get the concept in your head to your players that they want to accelerate to the ball, and the penultimate step, the second to last step, is actually a leap where you're going to cover about 10 feet, and then the left foot comes around and just closes. And then once you get to that point, with both your feet on the ground, it's important to have your arms hyperextended back behind you so that you can drive them forward. And then the trick, there's a lot of biomechanical studies and stuff too, but what I think about, when if I'm not jumping well, is just the kind of the feeling that you want to get off the ground quickly. I mean, you don't want to pound into the ground and then try to jump up because your force is going to go into the ground and you're just going to sink. But if you can think kind of just to snap up off the floor as quickly as possible, with your arms driving into the air, that'll help. If that's the right physics in the jump, that the floor is going to impart like a rebound, like a bounce to you, a big impact upwards, and launch you into the air. So that big approach, accelerate to the ball, and try to get off the ground as quickly as possible. And then, the rest, once you're in the air, you can't really change your flight. So you got to make sure that you take off so that you stay behind the ball, so you can contact the ball in front of your forehead at full extension. Like in this photo, you can see that my arm's fully extended. I think I've already hit the ball, so my arm's coming down a little bit. But yeah, you want to reach and contact at full extension. That's one of the mistakes I see is some players have this phenomenal jump, and they hit the ball around their ear, and they lose about a meter of height, to clear the net with. And then another important thing for you coaches out there is to also focus on the landing. A lot of coaches don't, they don't care, where the ball goes, is it a killer or whatever. But I think that's one of the reasons I think I'm the only guy on the roster of 12 for the Olympic team that hasn't had knee surgery. Even Karch went down with the knee surgery. Because I really listened when the biomechanists talked to us. Well, this guy, Bob Gaida, he was a strength coach from Chicago, and he'd talk about how you want to land like a butterfly. I mean, you shouldn't hear. That's a test you coaches can give. Can you hear the players land, or do they come down with a boom? So you come down toes, heels, knees, arch your back. Don't have a banana back, and because you're actually doing something unnatural. I mean, human beings aren't meant to jump 38 inches and come down, spike a volleyball. So practice coming down softly. So that's kind of the steps in spiking. The whole hitting bit, in my day, and today it's true too. I mean, you want to be able to hit all shots. And I lived off of hitting the line. Whenever I challenged Craig Buck in practice cross court, or the 6'9" Russians cross court, I get clamped. So, I didn't have that sharp inside the middle blocker hit, although, some of your players should learn that one too. What I relied on was, aiming for that back line, pretty much the a yard in from the end line and a yard in from the sideline. Those areas, not in the central area of the court. That's where the defenders are anyway. So, hitting high off the hands. I mean, you can be 5'9", and a great player. The Italian head coach now, Anastasi, was barely 6 feet. He was one of the best hitters I ever played against, because he was they call it KG or whatever. He had all these different shots, and then the line shot. I mean that is one that I tell my players that I coach is always open. I mean even if the the blockers line up there on the antenna, blockers are trained to press back into the court. And as soon as they press back into the court at the antenna, that opens up this wedge between the antenna, this open area, like a pizza slice between the antenna and the arm, the blocker's arm, that there's a room for the volleyball to fit in and to tool the blocker down the line. So I think you need to practice all your different shots, your tips, your roll shots, and coaches need to take time to do that. I think that's about it for hitting.
Okay. That's good stuff. I mean, everybody is relatively smaller than some of the hitters they hit against, and you're right. Those are some pretty important tips to get around the big block or a block that's bigger than you are, for sure. We'll go
but
to
don't
passing.
tip, for sure, don't tip for match point or game point ever. That's a cardinal. That drives me crazy when I see that. You don't want to tip the victory. You got to go for it. Anyway,
yeah,
that's a tip on tipping.
All right. Here's fairly important skills. And I erred by letting this say passing. I should have said in these next two slides serve receiving, because that's what you were one of the world's best at for so many years. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, thanks for the compliment. I actually did think that in my brain, that I was the world's, one of the world's best. Actually, I thought I was the world's best passer, and that's part of passing, is that kind of confidence. And it's not cockiness or, it is cockiness, but it's not conceit. It's not a bad trait to have when you're playing sports, to think that you're the best in the world. I mean, you can pretend that. There's no harm in that, as long as you don't walk around with your teammates, acting that way. But in your mind, as you're practicing and so forth, you can think that way. I think that's a wonderful thing about sports, is that it's kind of imaginary stage. But passing, boy, it looks like I've had a few too many beers here in this photo. I was hanging out with Jack Flora, maybe. I don't know back in the day. But anyway, actually, that brings up a point. I mean, I haven't really looked at this photo a whole lot. It looks like a pepper, relaxed pepper, but between warming up. But anyway, what you'll I can comment on passing a little bit. Let me think. So to me, passing, the way I, when I talk about it, you can break it down into a number of steps. And the first one is, starts with, has nothing to do with your form, but you look through the net at the server and you try to guess, make a educated guess where he's going to serve you. The anticipation is a huge part of sports, and the best in the world at anything. It looks like, man, how did they plan that? Like they're like ahead of time. How the heck did they dig that? That shot was just a rocket. So you're not reacting, you're anticipating. Because if you got to react, a lot of times you're going to be too late. So in passing, I'm thinking already. I'm looking through the net. This guy served me short last time. This is the jump server. So I'm kind of playing it through my mind, where he might serve me. So that's kind of the first step. I'd say the second step is you got to pick up the flight of the ball very quickly. When it's about a meter off the server's hand, you should know exactly where the ball is going to land on your side of the court. So you don't wait for the ball to cross the net and then try to react. You've already picked up the flight of the ball. And baseball players do this very well. When there's a pop fly into deep center field, what they do, they tilt their head, up, and that somehow helps you gauge the trajectory of the ball. So then they run to the right spot. They catch the ball. I run to the spot, to a spot behind where the ball's going to land, so I can move through the ball to the target. That was one of Bill Neville's great sayings, I thought, was, he'd say this over and over again. You want to move through the ball to the target. So when I pass, I want to set up a couple steps behind where the ball's going to land, so then I can move my weight and my arms through the ball towards the setter. I don't want to be falling backwards, because that's not a power position. You're at a disadvantage then. So, moving, and that brings up feet. I talk about how feet are important in passing. It sounds, kind of silly. There are coaches out there that say, well, it's all in the arms, but really, if your feet are out of position, it doesn't matter how great your arms are, you're going to get used by the ball. So moving your feet to get behind where the ball is going to land is key. And whenever I was ace, which happened sometimes, but fairly infrequently, I'd kind of replay it and I'd say, why did I get ace? And it was always because I was surprised I didn't move my feet, not so much my arms or my platform. So, okay, so you're behind the ball, and now I guess I can talk about the platform a little bit. Although, that picture, it looks horrible. I mean, in a way, but that's how I pass. I just placed my right hand right in my left hand, and I didn't unnaturally bend my wrists down. I know a lot of coaches, and Doug Beal tried to change this in me. Sorry, Doug. Back in college, he said, Aldis, you're never going to be able to pass well if you don't, hold your hands this way with your thumbs together. Now, kind of, unnaturally, fold your wrists, break your wrists down. But you can see the platform here. There's a big platform. My forearms are, turned out and presented towards the ball. And this takes some strength. I think that's why when you coach youth, you ask them to kind of get their thumbs together. So, but the key is that the forearms are flat there, right above the wrists. And I've passed many balls, with just one arm, when it floats and kind of gets over to one side. And my eyes too. What I teach is you don't have time to look the ball down into your arms. I mean, it's just you want to take in the full field of vision, and after a while, the ball, at that point, you don't want to change your arms anyway. I mean, it's going to take like a millisecond for that ball to move that yard to hit my arms. So I would just, actually, though my eyes do look like I'm just taking in the whole field of vision. And then once your platform's out, you can talk about tilting the platform towards the target. So the ball really has no choice but to go right to the setter's forehead if you have it tilted properly. You don't want to swivel or swing your arms. You just want to actually use your legs. That's what I teach. Kind of shrug your shoulders and use and just kind of move your you don't actually swing your platform. It's your legs that kind of drive the platform up towards the ball, because you want to minimize all the swinging, and that just presents error or room for error. And then the mental part of it, that pretty much gets the ball to the setter. I think those are the things I talked about. You read the setter, you kind of pick out where the ball is coming across the net and move your feet to get behind the ball. Present the platform. Keep it away from your stomach. You see where the platform's away from my stomach. It should be out more, 90 degrees. And use your legs to kind of force that rebound to go right to the setter. I didn't talk about the mental aspect. That's probably the biggest thing that, the way I thought was, okay, this is kind of an example of it. And this is a downfall of many passers. I mean, they think, I got aced, oh my gosh, I stink, don't serve me. Now those are all no-nos. I mean, you got to be thinking, after you get aced, you're thinking, that was the best serve of that guy's career. And then if I got aced right after that again, 2 consecutive aces, I'd still say the same thing. You lucky son of a gun, come at me again. get ace the third time, you're just triple lucky. And then, I'd be, subbed out on the bench, I'd still go, that guy was lucky. I mean, you just got to keep thinking that way and let the coach, take care of the, your spot on the floor or not. But it's just like this supreme confidence.
Aldi, I'm going to send to everybody that's listening tonight, because I've got their emails. There's a very fascinating study by the United Kingdom BBC on, I can't remember his name exactly. It's like Ronaldinho or Rolando or somebody that's a great soccer player from Brazil. And you're talking about anticipation and reading, they do a fascinating thing where they take just a soccer player that's okay, and then him, and they have somebody shooting across towards the goal, and as the guy kicks it, the lights go black, and they have a camera in night vision still on, and you see how all it took was that meter, like you kind of talked about of the server, all it took was the kick, motion, and the ball flight for a meter. Even though it went black, Ronaldinho was able to head one of the balls, and when he kicked another lower, just kick and time it perfectly and score a goal. Whereas the other guy that was more normal totally whiffed both shots once it went dark because he couldn't track or see the ball long enough. And I think that's one of the things that when I said we shouldn't be calling this passing but serve reception, is that I'm going to ask you now something I've asked of all our liberos. What % of your success at passing the ball happens before the ball breaks the plane of the net? Of 100%, is it more than half, less than half, equal, 50%? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say, like 75% of it is before, if I'm not prepared, that's when I'm going to get ace. If I'm not tracking the ball, because the rest of it, all is kind of instinctual. How to present the platform to the ball, and it's just if I get jumped on, kind of surprised. If I'm not focused, I'm tired. That's when I get aced. And we had some great, marathon drill. I remember we had like 30 serves we'd have to pass in a row, Karch and I, before we could end practice. And they had to be, not perfect passes, but, we could run the offense off of them. And with those, and the rest of the team was back there just bombing them. So we were, it was really intense, to lay that ball up there. And and I know for you coaches out there, it's tough. It's one of the toughest things to practice, passing, because it's boring as all get out. Who wants to, pass the ball? Whoa. I think Doug and Bill and Tony did a good job of creating passing games that were competitive. And that's what you want to strive for as a coach, to keep, some competition in the passing, because without that pass, I think you guys know, or, you can't run the offense. And that's one of my pet peeves of, the stats out there, that when you look at a stat, NCAA stat or high school box score, the box scores, that they don't rank passing. And yet if they did, they would, it correlates, with side out percentage, which is what you want very highly. All they track is the serve reception errors, so
we've got a
that's
question.
a tough thing for a libero to deal with. That's the only time they get some a tally in the box scores if they screw up. So
we've got a good question, I think, from a fan out there that we'll put in here. The 84 team did far better passing the Brazilian jump serve in the finals than they did in the pool play match with them. What changes did they make to accommodate the jump serve?
Huh. Yeah, I don't really recall making a lot of changes. Back in '84, you could block the serve, which was kind of a weird thing.
That was the last year you could.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know if it wasn't so much a tactical thing that we did. I don't believe that we passed better in the final. I mean, we just played. It was like night and day. In the pool play, we got spanked 0-3. I mean, I think we were kept under 10 points. You only played the 15 back then, but not getting into the teens is, you're getting beat pretty bad in the pool play. So nothing was going right, not the passing, not we were getting blocked, and the Brazilians were just, they were hot. That's the way they play, kind of hot and cold. And luckily, that's the way sports is, that, when it counted in the final, we got a chance to get back even with them. It just flipped. I mean, we were absolutely hot, and we started out blocking them, and more on that later. But everything went right. Those nights where you just stick your arm out and the ball goes right to the setter. That's what was happening for all of us and the USA team. So it might have been that we didn't block the jump serve as much, or maybe they hit them in the net more. That they got. Maybe you can tell me. I actually don't remember. I just remember all of our game, all aspects of our game. Everything was on in the final.
I was fortunate enough to be there, and I remember thinking, uh-oh, this is different than the pool play, when Pat Powers hit a ball that, in warm-up, that every other ball had kind of gone up to the bottom of the scoreboard, and that one that he got just on a slight overpass, and it vanished up way above the scoreboard. It was probably the hardest ball I've ever seen hit.
Yeah, Pat Powers, he was like Gumby. I mean, he could hit these radical angles, and when he was on, those radical angles were like undiggable, and he'd hit them from the back row and on the net. And he was on that night. I mean, it was really fantastic to watch him play like that. I could talk more about the Brazil. But the passing, I'd say, it might have. Yeah, I think our passing wasn't maybe that bad in the pool play either. I don't recall getting like served off the court or aced. It's just our offense. I mean, they were blocking us, and we just really couldn't do anything right. Anyway.
All right. Well, let's go to digging and blocking now. Last sort of question or area. So, got a shot of you doing some digging back in your heyday. So, talk about digging and blocking. That's sort of keeping the ball off the floor.
Yeah, this is a fun picture. I have this as my Facebook picture. The Mizuno gave this to me as a gift. They gave me a poster. Somewhere in Japan, I see the writing in back, and you can see, I'm laid out. This was one thing I was, good at. I mean, after I learned how to dive at Ohio State, it just really came naturally. And you need to be fairly strong. I mean, this is the dive, skill in digging, where you can pretty much see I'm supporting all my body weight with my forearm that's kind of sliding under the ball, and my left hand, is kind of doing the push-up there. So for you coaches out there, you need your players to have strong upper body strength. They have to be able to do kind of what I call flying push-up, where, your chest and your hips and your knees and toes touch in that water, to be able to, and then you run and do it, and that's your dive. But digging came, very naturally to me. I started, like I said, at these Latvian camps, I think, following my dad around when I was 3 years old, chasing balls down, and somebody would pepper with me or something, hit a ball at me. But, digging, on the national team level, I think at any level, a lot of it is attitude and the ability to sacrifice your body. So once you learn the basic skills, the basic dig, which to me I didn't separate from passing. a serve reception. My arms are exactly the same. I hold my hands the same in digging a ball as I did passing a serve. To me, a serve actually is just an attack from 30 feet back. So there's no reason you should ever get aced. I mean, it should be a piece of cake. The guy's got to spike at you from 30 feet back, so you ought to be able to lay it up to the setter. And then, when it's spiked on the net, then that great comparison with baseball. I mean, they're hitting the ball maybe, I don't know, 60, 70 miles per hour, but you only have 10 feet to react. Where you got like a hardball pitcher throwing the ball, 80, 90 miles per hour, but they have the full length, from the mound to the plate. So that's easier to me than digging a rocket, out of the middle. But yeah, so once you learn the skills, the basic, base position, holding your hands out to dig the ball, you need to learn what do you do when the ball's hit at your face. I mean, now you can kind of gaff the ball up, that wasn't legal back in my time. You had to, do a knuckler, as we called it, or a tomahawk. We had all these different names for balls that you could take over your head. You need those every once in a while now too. I don't endorse at all the pancake. That's what you can see in this picture. If I would have tried to pancake that, I probably would have flubbed it up. So I always, found time to fist the ball. Actually, the pancake's not bad. The problem is that people, young players will do it right by their ear. So they're not fully extended. I mean, you should be kind of fully extended, the last resort, pancake under the ball. They'll just do it, right by their foot. So that's the wrong technique. And on the national team, I mean, we did these coach-on-ones where, to learn how to sacrifice your body. I don't think that's legal anymore. I mean, you could probably call the Humane Society on a coach, or if they put players through a one-on-one. Although, with my MVP, the Maryland volleyball program, that was one of their favorite drills. Like, come on, you got nothing, coach. As they're kind of flopping around on the floor. A lot of kids are challenged by that. So. But we had these like torture drills where, a lot of times coaches will do, okay, let's do, you got, 1 minute in the pit, and they can gas you. Back in the national team days when we stunk, in the Dayton days when we were 19th in the world, and this is in the 70s, before we climbed to the top, we used to have these like pit drills where there was no time. I mean, you just went until you just couldn't move anymore. And they kind of swept you off the floor. Your teammates would come and drag you off. The next guy would go in. And, yeah, but then the coaches kind of saw the light. I mean, we didn't do that in the 80s because there was no need to, because they had already, like, broken us like dogs. We were trained. You just would go for every ball. You wouldn't think. That's the attitude you want to instill in your players, not to think about, not to make a decision, can I get this ball up or not, but just, go for it. Follow through with the dive. Anyway, that's digging. I can talk about blocking a little more, or
Yeah, talk a little bit more about blocking, and then we'll go to the
okay.
Q&A, the questions that you've already answered. A couple of them you've already recovered, but there's some other ones that you can elaborate on. So for right now, why don't you just talk about blocking, what your thoughts are.
Okay. Well, blocking for me was one of the funnest things to do, the most rewarding, because I was 6'2", so I was the shortest guy on the team. When we lined up by height, it went from me up to Craig Buck, and so when I stuffed an opponent like a Russian, it was like almost like 2 points, because the Russian guy couldn't believe it. Like, where did he come from? But a lot of time, I had a lot of opportunities, because if you're a hitter, you're looking at Craig Buck or Aldis, they would hit at me. But I think in blocking, the most important thing to teach is to penetrate the net, and this is something that it's hard for some players to get. They keep trying to go high, straight up like antenna arms instead of over. Because I can remember blocking a lot of balls, even when I'm late, just by getting some part of your hand over the opponent's court, their airspace, penetrating across the net. And there are lots of drills that you can do as coaches, to enforce that. But that's something you got to get in your players' minds early. Is that as they're going vertical and you start right away getting your hands over across the opponent's net. Don't go straight up and then try to clamp, with like a pike move, but get over right away. And I'd say my biggest drills blocking was in the Olympic final. I was known to be a passer, but one of the first swings for Brazil in the gold medal match, Del Zotto, a Brazilian, he was a great hitter. I mean, he just found me, and I stuffed him, and it was just wonderful. It's just I think I had maybe two or three stuff blocks in that match, and I never have 2 or 3 stuff blocks, but it was like I was saying before, one of those days where everything's kind of going your way. So even you shorter players out there, even if you can just get, the fingers across the net, just get them across the net. And you can do some control blocking too. That's something that is a little bit more advanced. You want to always go for the block stuff, but sometimes you're not in the right position, and you can revert to control blocking. The ball goes off your hands, and nobody can direct it, perfectly back somewhere to the middle back, but you can pop the ball up, and your defense can have a chance to track it down, and you can turn.
Excellent. To everybody, just a reminder, you can ask questions in either the chat box or the question box, and we're going to go through a little bit of a Q&A already that's been prepared, and then everybody, it's opened up to questions that you might have. I could unmute you if you want to talk about it, but you can type in your question into that question in the chat boxes. So, Ollie, the first one is one that you've kind of explained in the sense that the rest was history. We asked you what made you pick volleyball over other sports, and of course you did a good job earlier explaining what had happened and stuff. So we'll leave that up on the screen just for a sec so people can see that. And we'll get to the next one, which was about VBR. If you remember, you're answering a question on that. You talked about how you did your own visual-motor behavior work and stuff. So why don't you elaborate on this?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's kind of, it's not, it sounds like something that's really kind of spooky, but it worked for me. I think everybody has maybe their ways of trying to relax, but before big games, I would basically, I would prefer to be alone, and I think everybody does for a little bit, and then you get together and go crazy with your teammates to fire up. But I would replay in my mind, how I was successful at spiking, kind of the things, or passing, or whatever the skills, the things that I've talked about here, and I would, like, before the match, I would play in my mind a successful pass, picking out where the server might serve me, visualizing the ball came across the net, moving behind the ball, getting my platform out, laying it up there, or being a successful spike down the line, or those kind of individual skills, or just going through the scouting report. Here's rotation 1, 2, 3, 4. What did they do? And if it wasn't playing back in my mind properly, I would maybe grab the paper, the 6 rotation chart out again, and replay it. And so I think that works in a lot of things. I think in work or whatever you do. So that's what they called it back then. I'm not sure what they call it now, but so we did. We had psychiatrists work with us, some sports psychologists. I guess there were psychologists, not psychiatrists. Some of the guys needed psychiatrists, but, you know, he, but, I think that helps. That that mental training is a
All
valid
right.
part of sports. Okay.
We asked you who was your coach that impacted you the most and why, and you gave us some good answers. So you've answered a little bit of it before, but I kind of like Suguru being your communicator person, the one. So tell us a little bit more about some of the stuff you put up here about Holcroft and Suguru.
Yeah. Well, Holcroft was my high school soccer coach. And you can tell I'm kind of soft-spoken, and it comes across sometimes that I'm soft. But he would really grab me and get me angry, and teach me that it's okay to get angry on the court, on the field in soccer. And he was a great coach. Liskevich, I mentioned, he was really the whole student-athlete bit. I recommend any of you high school players out there, investigate, Oregon State University. He's a wonderful man and coach. Furuichi passed away. Suguru, he was when Liskevich left for where'd he go? Pacific, yeah. Terry went to Pacific to coach women's volleyball after my sophomore year, and I was like heartbroken. He's deserting us, but Suguru Furuichi, he was from Japan. He was a PhD student at Ohio State, and he was involved with the USA program too. He knew Japanese volleyball, and he was he couldn't speak English very well, and it was funny. The team had a bunch. We had a bunch of Latvian guys on the Buckeye team too. I think like 6 or 7. So we'd be talking, our secret Latvian language, so the opponent could understand us. The English guys, would be, the other guys, it's kind of funny. But you know what? He really communicated with his look. That's one of the things I always remember in the timeouts. He'd say, "Eyes, eyes." So nobody's looking down or moping. We'd all look into each other's eyes. It's a little uncomfortable at first sometimes for guys in particular to look at each other, but there's a power there. When you stare into your teammates' eyes, and you can really build some conviction just through that. And I already talked about Doug and Neville and Crab. I mean, those guys. I don't think I have to mention them anymore. We were very fortunate when we were building the USA program to have them as the coaches there in San Diego.
All right. Well, we asked you a question about your parents supporting you, and of course, as well as the best advice you ever got from a teacher, a coach.
Yeah. My parents were very supportive. I mean, they paid for my way to school at Ohio State. I was an out-of-stater, and what's a cool story is we had no scholarships back then at Ohio State for volleyball. My senior year, after being to the NCAAs 3 years in a row and the basketball team wasn't that good, the athletic department bestowed 2 full rides on the Buckeye team, and I got half of one, so that helped my parents out some. What was the best advice you ever got from a coach, teacher? I think Doug said this actually. Don't try to do tactically what you cannot do technically. It sounds kind of cryptic, but it just means you got to be able to do it in practice. Practice is so important. Whatever radical angle shot you want to make in the game, you better have done it in practice successfully 9 out of 10 times. Otherwise, don't pull it out in a match. So practice I'm a huge proponent of practice, and you do that a lot more than you do matches, and then the matches are the fun part. You play, and then you win or lose, and then that's just this like my philosophy in coaching. That's pretty much it. You come full circle. Most people are going to lose, so you persevere and you come right back to practice again. So,
all right. We asked about the most important thing you did for your high performance development and success, and you gave a little bit of the insight, but I don't think people realize the journey of the team from Dayton to San Diego to Colorado Springs and now to Anaheim and all that. But you were one of the first ones, because in Dayton, that was the first time we ever did that, men or women.
Yeah, I'd say that was one of Doug's brilliant things to establish a training center. Even though it wasn't Dayton, that part was, but the training center concept was brilliant, because that gave us an edge over the other countries that, their players, their stars didn't play together year-round. They played on separate club teams in Italy, and they only came together for the World Championships or the Olympics in the summer. Yet we, played all year together in Dayton, Ohio, and I remember St. John Smith coming and freezing and leaving, but then he came back to San Diego and tried out for a little bit. It was hard to attract the California guys, and we stunk. I mean, we were learning to be good. We were, Canada, Mexico, everybody was beating us. Every once in a while we'd pull out a win here or there, but we were young and learning. And then moving the training center to San Diego, which brought all the California guys in easily, really helped, and they helped with the attitude that, yeah, we can beat the Russians in the future. And actually right now, a lot of younger guys were like, oh, let's beat those Russians right now. I hadn't seen them yet. But at that point, we knew we were in LA because we were hosting the Olympics, and so it was a great 4 years in San Diego. And we climbed. I mean, every tournament we got a little bit better. In '82, we were 13th in the World Championships. We were close to breaking into the top 12. But back when I started in Dayton, we were probably 19th in the world. I think my first World Championships in Italy, Belgium and all these little countries were beating us, Finland. But training year-round, that gave us the edge, and those 2 years from '82 to '84, we really accelerated with pioneering that two-passer offense, and Timmons and all those guys, Buck, and they all showed up. Powers, Dvorak. I can't mention all 12 guys, but those were like the starters. Karch too, jumped in there.
All right, that's about HP. Let's go away from volleyball a little bit, about favorite movie and musician stuff going on. So you've answered.
You guys care to hear about that? I guess I like Gladiator. It's one of my favorite. It's underdog. Guy goes from being a slave to just about the Roman emperor. Yeah, that was kind of like the USA Volleyball rise too. And I'm actually, I play guitar. I'm playing in a band. I'm playing in downtown Manhattan Friday night. Don't tell my work. I'm taking a sick day, but it's a Latvian thing again. There's a Latvian fundraiser, so we're playing. I like the Allman Brothers live at Fillmore. I don't think most of the listeners know who the Allman Brothers are, but I like slide guitar. I like the blues.
A guitar god wannabe, huh? But you can play the guitar, unlike some of my friends.
I'm a wannabe, though. It takes practice, which I have no time for.
All right, best books then.
Best books. This is a good one. I encourage everybody to read it. Written by Ed Viesturs, who is a Latvian of Latvian descent. I saw on this website he gets like $20K per talk. He's one of these inspirational talkers. I was wondering how much I was getting for tonight, John.
Millions.
Okay. But anyway, he wrote this book, No Shortcuts to the Top, and he's climbed all the 14 highest peaks, and it has lots of lessons for sports too. I mean, he talks about, it's kind of like practice. He doesn't, or what I talked about, don't try to do, in a game what you can't do in practice. I mean, he meticulously just follows, packs his bag, redundancy, being able to do it over and over again. Don't take you got to take risks, but they should all be calculated. When you hit the line, when you hit cross court, it's a wonderful book. It's kind of sad. I mean, he was in the IMAX movie on Everest. He's the guy in the tent that's talking to his buddy on the mountain that's freezing to death, trying to comfort him. So anyway, For Whom the Bell Tolls, read that in high school. Hemingway. I like Hemingway. It was easy to read. Short sentences. No, I really like that book. It was kind of epic.
So, favorite quote, and you talked about Theodore Roosevelt, so I'll put it up for people to read, and you can kind of summarize, like you said there.
Yeah, this is a really long quote, but it's not meant for the locker room, but you could give it to your players. I think it's just great. I'll just read it really quick. And what I like about it is it really puts critics in their place. I mean, people that complain all the time, they're on the sideline, or the fans that are, getting in your dish. He said, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is not effort without error and shortcomings. But who does actually strive to do the deed, who knows the great enthusiasm, the great devotion, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory or defeat. Now, I love that quote. I mean, I can think of, as I'm reading it, I'm thinking volleyball, who errs and comes short again and again. I mean, we all err and we all lose, but the thing is that what I mentioned before, that perseverance. I mean, you get back up, and you give it your best, and at worst, at least you tried. You gave it your best, and that you didn't sit on the sidelines. Anyway.
All right, excellent. Well worth putting up on the wall for a lot of gym and clubs for sure, because it's got a lot of truth. We've got sort of memories we asked, going back, and I think there's some little fun stories in here people might not have heard.
See, high school, yeah, I got thrown out of gym class. The coach hadn't really seen anybody spike the ball. It was kind of that guerrilla volleyball, slapping it over, so I jumped and broke the net. And then I saw Mr. Leaf when I came back with my gold medal and kind of made a joke about it in the class assembly that they had. And in club, there wasn't any club around where I played. College, I think I talked about this, winning the final, getting to the Final Four. I never won. My son, I'll brag about my middle boy, Mick. He actually won this past NCAA Final Four. He played for the Buckeyes. So
taking, 27 years, but Pete Hansen finally, for just Pete alone, I think, and 30-plus years, and finally broke through because they had Berzins on the court.
Yeah, I don't know about the Berzins on the court, but yeah, it's partly Mick played libero. He played his role great, and Pete had a vision. Like 5 years ago, he put together a team, and they peaked. Many of the starters were fifth-year seniors, and they beat Santa Barbara in the final. It was great for my dad to see too. He was 87, sitting next to me. He couldn't stand up. We were in the Buckeye section. All the kids were going crazy, so I was kind of talking them down to him. Sitting there, they just scored another point. Anyway, this is my story. We played Ball State, and my freshman year, and this guy Rob Steele dug a ball up that we were going to lose. It was one of those campfire defenses that Chris Marlowe talks about. The ball was dropping. I was frozen. Hadn't really, and this guy, came out of nowhere and popped the ball up. We turned it around to win. I talk about in college, 84 gold. That was sweet. 85 was great. We won the World Cup. I want to talk just just briefly about the Revenge Tour. I don't know if that's coming up in another slide.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
All right. Most desired. 12. Yeah, I was 12. I don't know. Kind of latched onto that number. I was lucky to have it all throughout my career. What did you? I remember Paul Sunderland had it when I came onto the USA team. He gave it to me. He switched numbers out. Maybe it wasn't working for him. What did you do to get good at volleyball? Yeah, I really, what did I do? I think I played other sports more when I was alone. I really do believe in, just doing some other things like racquetball or tennis or skiing or swimming or whatever. We did have weight training programs on our own that we followed. But when I was younger, I just enjoyed playing other sports.
Well, let's go back to the this thing. I don't know if I've got, it doesn't seem to be able to showing up. So why don't you cover the Revenge Tour? I can see it on my slides here, but it doesn't show up on the screen. So,
What, the Brazil match?
Yeah, you talk about since college that, your favorite thing was your last tournament in '85. You talked about, but
yeah, after the Olympic Games in '84, we beat Brazil, right? And they were irritated, to say the least, because they had beaten us in the pool play, and they invited us down to Brazil, this like revenge tour, as I call it, and that was the best atmosphere I've ever played volleyball in. We were playing in these basketball arenas, these domes that you couldn't kick a volleyball up and hit the ceiling, and they were packed. They sat 25 to 30,000 Brazilians, and they were packed like 3 hours before the whistle, with them all chanting and banging drums. And if you meet 5 Brazilians, if there are like 5 Brazilians in a crowd in the U.S., they make a lot of noise. But this was just 30,000 Brazilians, and they love their sports. And it was interesting how we had to come out on the floor. The Brazilian guys were great. We're friends with them, and we're friends with a lot of the national team guys from other countries. And we kind of intermingled with them. So I was walking between De Silva and Bernard Rajpan. so nobody would pelt us with the pesos or ice and stuff. So they recognized that we would just get pelted, if we came out and sat. But we did, and then we crossed this moat. No kidding, their basketball arenas, floors down there, have a moat, not filled with water, but it's just this ditch that's about 4 feet concrete. It's not dirt. It's like 4 feet deep, about 5 feet wide. So you can't just run onto the floor and tackle a player. And there were police in riot gear with their helmets and shields and batons every 10 yards that circled the floor. And so we're walking on and we play, and I remember warming up actually, and one of the balls going towards the fans by the moat, and this little Brazilian girl, she was so cute, she popped up and threw a wad of paper at me. She was behind one of these banners, and I thought she'd give me chase the ball down and give it back to me, but she had that Brazil fever too, and they were, the crowd's cheering Brazil, Brazil, and here's that mental, behavior rehearsal. I would pretend that they were saying Berzins, Berzins, and so they're cheering for me. So I would just turn it around, and those were really fond memories. We got our butts kicked down there. I think we won 4 out of the 5 matches. So it just goes to show, timing's everything in sports. That one night in L.A. pretty much, gave so much momentum to the USA program.
Well, they remain probably the sort of competition that even to this day that we kind of compete back and forth with. Tell us about Cuba, because that was in the time when it was even more impossible to get in.
Yeah, that was one of the great bennies of being on the USA team, is that unlike the Army, where you had to lay your life on the line, we got to fly everywhere, and to see these really cool countries. Cuba, allowed us in. We landed in we took off from Miami in one of these like black Casablanca type airplanes from, prop thing, and landed in Havana. And it's really a strange country in that back then they had a very large Soviet Union influence. And so they're kind of like Eastern European in that, like after matches they would give you flowers. That's a very European custom. And they talk Spanish, and the great their music. I told you I love music. They have just a great jazz and great clubs down there in Havana. And if you're just a normal American, you never get a chance to see that. We saw some Canadians down there, really unspoiled beaches, Veradero Beach, I think it was called. Just beautiful beaches, and wonderful people. And I don't want to get political here. I don't understand why there's still some kind of embargo there with them. I mean, Castro's fading, but he loved his sports. He came to some of our matches with the women's team too when I coached, and it was. I remember being in a bar down there, and we did meet an American. We're like prying, what's he doing in Cuba? And he said that he had, I don't know if he's telling the truth or not, but he said he had, shot somebody in the U.S. and he was just hanging out there. Stay away from the authorities. There are lots of stories out of Cuba.
Yeah.
Snorkeling there, it's really a beautiful country.
And this last one you had was Venice, Italy in '78 as a final memory.
Yeah, I think I sent this a bunch. We were not that good yet, and we kept falling into the, in the pools. I think there were 24 teams, and you get in the bottom 12, and then you're in the bottom 4. I think we finished maybe 19th, and but the good news was that our bottom pool was in Venice. And there's an island off the coast of Venice, Lido, where we were kind of at a hand back then. The wine is something they drink there. They don't drink Coke. So I just remember, unlimited great food and red wine and white wine. And then we were drinking so much, I kind of recall that they cut us off a little bit. But anyway, I think those times have changed a little bit. I know they have.
Well, Daniel asks, who do you think was the best player of that era and why?
78 World Championships?
Or, in the 80s too?
In the 80s, when I played, Karch was the player of the century. He was the most all-around, best all-around player, and he had that mental attitude that I've never met anybody else with a tougher mental attitude. And the other thing is, it was contagious. It spread to the other team members. So the coaches had a pretty easy job in some ways with Karch on the floor in the motivation department. Same with practice. There wasn't a drill or a ball that would fall where he would be upset with somebody. I'd say Karch was I'd say, for another teim, I meant the Russians, they were kind of the guys that we looked up to. Here's another great memory. Poland. In that era, in the 70s, Poland won the gold medal in Montreal, before the Moscow Games. And I went as a young Ohio State student up there. I witnessed the gold medal match between Poland and the Soviet Union at the time. And I think maybe the best player, the guy I most admired, was Wojtowicz. He was a middle blocker for Poland that at the time he kind of was studied as a reed blocker. He never got fooled. And he also hit from the back row. That's something that Poland really brought to the forefront, was this back row attack, which was kind of novel. They did it more than the Russians did, or really anybody did at the time. So I'd say Wojtowicz from Poland back in that time, and then Karch with me.
Well, going back to your free wine thing, Claudio asks, how do you advise kids traveling today to avoid the pitfalls of, quote, unlimited wine, or whatever the distractions might be that keep them from being focused when in important tournaments?
Yeah,
what are you advising now?
I mean, there's absolutely no alcohol now until you're legal. I mean, you shouldn't be drinking anything. I mean, we were grown men, in Lido.
Well, I think he's using that as an example of
Yeah,
distractions
but
would be
yeah, with
best.
drugs and alcohol. I know there are temptations when you're a teenager, but I think personally everything in moderation. I mean, as long as you're not doing anything illegal, you know, uh, it's enjoy life, but that's why sports, and I commend everybody here that's listening, you're doing the right thing. You're already, if you want to play sports at a high level, you're going to take care of your body and not abuse it and get your rest, along with training hard and practicing hard. So, try not to bend to peer pressure and do the right thing. I hope all of you guys have those Jiminy Crickets on your shoulders. You should know when it's time to go to bed or not to, go down a certain path just because everybody else is. Think about competing and having fun in sports.
So to get in shape now, you walk your dog and you still play. Tell us about this pre-competition stuff that you were thinking about here on the slide.
The pre-competition stuff, yeah, I wasn't that superstitious, but I did like to have a good warm-up, good pepper, and I needed to break a sweat before the match started. I think that was important to me. No, I didn't wear the same socks every match, or whatever, but, I tended not to be superstitious because I really wanted to feel like I was in control. I could change the outcome. I do remember in the pool play against Brazil in the Olympics, trying to wish us, to call on some spirit to help me win or to put a ball away. Actually, it was my mother who had passed away the year before in '83. And I was so, I was getting upset and frustrated. We're losing 0-3 to these Brazilians. I'm just saying, okay, Mom, help me put this ball away. Help me jump a little higher. Of course, I got clamped, So it was that was the lesson, or reinforced what I already knew. It's within you. You got to find it, and
Well, that brings us to
and
this,
from your teammates.
I think this one of these final slides, and of course you guys can be asking questions, and I'll keep reading them off here, but your favorite pre-match meal with the near 4-hour matches back then was a banana, as you say, but can you elaborate a little bit more about how to get over a bad performance?
Yeah. How do I get over a bad performance? Yeah, that was one of the things that you kind of break it down into pieces. On the court when things are going bad, I would just basically, if I was ace, that piece about being mentally tough and really wanting to be out there no matter what. And I'd have certain cues. I tried to mention them, in the skills. If I got blocked, I think about making sure I stayed behind the ball. Normally I was maybe under the ball or in too early, or trying to do something, something that is not in my repertoire, And so just, replay in your mind. After you fail, replay in your mind what went wrong. And it's probably one of those few cue things that your coach has been telling you all along. And then forget about it. And then here comes the next play. And the players that can do that, wipe the slate clean, don't let the previous play affect them, are the ones that are going to end up winning in the long run. And then with the whole match, I alluded to that a little bit, that you've lost a match, you're bummed. You should be bummed. It's natural to be bummed, but don't sulk for days over it. But you should. That's why I couldn't wait to get back into practice after losing a match, because I knew that it's a cycle. You practice hard, get an opportunity to play and show your stuff, and winning is easy. If you win, it's great. If you lose, it's how you react to losing that is going to separate you from the pack, that you don't sulk. You keep your confidence, you persevere, and you go right back into practice. Listen to the coach and try and improve. You just go around in this circle, and eventually, you get ahead. That's the right way to do it, and no matter what, in sports and outside, in life.
Well, if there's any other questions, you need to type them in right now, because otherwise we've gone a little bit over what I told Aldi we'd be doing, which is 90 minutes. We've gone...
Yeah, I need to get to my red wine, and I need to walk my dogs.
But if there's no other further questions coming in, Aldi, I know it's late back there, and you've got to start playing your guitar here soon. So I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance tonight. This is the first of what we hope to be many with our men and women's great players. We've got Clay and John Stanley as a duo coming up, Tom Hoff, Logan Tom, Misty May, and they are going to be recorded, or this has been recorded if all goes well, and we'll be posting it to the website so that people can see it. And with a slider bar, you can go to any part of this and replay it, and the slideshow that you're seeing would be up on the screen just like you've been watching tonight. So no other questions, just some nice big, a lot of thank yous coming in. So Aldi, thank you a ton. This has been a great evening. I learned a little bit about you and your kids, and I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you back there when I come back to watch my kid play at Princeton. So I'll take you out to dinner.
Thanks a lot. It was completely my pleasure. Thanks, you guys, for attending.
All right, everybody. Have a good evening.